Welcome to Request for Inspection. Sit back, relax, and concentrate, as the coming crime recap is not for the faint-hearted. Walking through the streets of Dessau-Roßlau at dusk, one experiences a somewhat sleepy town. The cobblestone streets are empty, and the stores are mostly closed. The wide streets are lined with elegant four-story buildings. Anhalt University of Applied Sciences encourages foreign students to study at its world-renowned institution. Students living in Dessau find the city welcoming. It's a comfortable place to spend a year or two while pursuing studies at the home of Bauhaus architecture. As students pass Friedenplatz on the way to their lectures on the morning of May 12, 2016, they unwittingly passed a tall pine tree that hid a dark secret. Hours passed as resident shopkeepers and students went about their business and passed by the site. By mid-morning, however, the tranquility of the historic downtown had already been disturbed. Police officers scurried through the alleys, emergency vehicles parked on the sidewalks, and sniffer dogs with handlers combed every square inch. The whole town knew who they were looking for, as news of the disappearance spread like wildfire through the community. Chinese student Yangjie Li had gone jogging the night before and never returned to her shared apartment. The next day, the worst was confirmed when her battered, half-naked body was found, hidden under a pine tree. As Yangjie's case was uncovered, the shocking truth about her last moments alive came to light, and the prime suspect was none other than the police chief's stepson. To recap such a chilling crime, we have to go right back to the beginning. Yangjie Li was born on September 9, 1990 in Henan, China. She was an only child, and her family of three was happy and loved spending time together. After high school, Yangjie studied civil engineering at the Henan University of Science and Technology. Yangjie aspired to becoming an architect and was inspired by classic Bauhaus architecture. In 2015, Yangjie got a chance and went to Germany. She settled well into her new life in Germany. Dessau is often described as a small town located less than a 2-hour drive from Berlin. She lived in a shared apartment in the center of Dessau and loved being in the middle of the action. Yangjie did not speak much German, but could communicate well in English. Most of the time she preferred to mingle with other Chinese students. Yangjie was athletic, and no matter how strenuous her studies were, she always found time in the day to go running. On Wednesday afternoon, May 11, 2016, Yangjie went shopping for some household items. It was a mild early spring day, and as soon as she got home, she changed into her running clothes, a white and grey shirt, black pants, and black sneakers. At 8:30 p.m., Yangjie said goodbye to her roommates, plugged in her headphones, and headed out for her twilight run. She took her usual route through the old city, past the museums, and through the city park. But when night fell, Yangjie was still not back. She would never return home. The next morning, her roommates, who had not seen her come home, informed the university liaison officer, who supervised Chinese students living in Dessau. They told her that Yangjie went jogging and did not come back. The liaison officer immediately called the police and reported Yangjie missing. The police acted quickly and deployed hundreds of officers across the city to search for the missing foreign student. The Chinese community took to social media, and news of Yangjie's disappearance spread quickly. Chinese expatriates in Dessau turned to the Chinese embassy in Berlin to help with the search. Dessau is a small city, and the streets were flooded with police officers and search vehicles. Initially, police focused on the city park and its surroundings, as this was a hotspot for criminal activity. A helicopter searched the area along her jogging route with a thermal imaging camera. Searches were also conducted on foot and with sniffer dogs. Sadly, the next day, at around 11 a.m. on Friday, May 13th, she was found. Yangjie's half-naked body was hidden under a bush at the base of a large pine tree in Hausmannstrasse, near Friedensplatz. Tragically, she was only a stone's throw from her apartment and less than 300 meters from a police station. All this time, she had been inconspicuously hidden. The wounds on Yangjie's head and face were so severe that police were unable to positively identify her at the scene. Her entire body was covered in blood. Her university professor, Rudolf Luckmann, was called in to identify her remains. He recalled her mouth, along with the face, was brutally smashed off. Her disfigured body was covered with wounds from a hard struggle for survival. An extensive police search of the area did not turn up many clues. Yangjie's clothes, her cell phone, or the key to her apartment could not be found. Coroners concluded that she had been dumped where she was found and that the murder had taken place elsewhere. The clock was ticking and the police needed to find the murderer and the crime scene fast. No one could imagine why anyone would want to end the life of such a lovely person. A murmur went through the city, and people speculated whether the attack on Yangjie was a racial crime. Yangjie Li's murder case exploded in the Chinese media. The Chinese embassy in Berlin issued a warning, urging young students to be cautious in Germany, not to jog alone or talk to strangers. Some Chinese students even withdrew their applications and returned home in fear. DNA tests confirmed that the body found in Hausmannstrasse was Yangjie. Anhalt University raised funds to cover Yangjie's parents' travel expenses, and they traveled as quickly as possible to Germany, arriving a week after their daughter disappeared. Yangjie's father, a police officer, trusted local law enforcement but offered to help with the investigation. As soon as he arrived, he asked to be taken to the place where his daughter's body had been found. The first theory of the German investigators was that Yangjie had been kidnapped and taken to a place outside the city centre. At this unknown location, she was raped and killed before her killer returned her body. However, this made little sense to Yangjie's father. He believed that the murder occurred in close proximity to where Yangjie's body was found. For Yangjie's father, the neighbouring building seemed to be the most appropriate starting point for an investigation. The autopsy report concluded that Yangjie had suffered a violent and brutal death and had fought to the bitter end. Her injuries were so extensive that the pathologist could not determine the exact cause of death. Any of the injuries could have killed her, and they were inflicted more or less at the same time. Yangjie was sexually assaulted, had multiple broken ribs, blood was found in her lungs, and she had suffered countless bruises all over her body. Skin cells under Yangjie's nails showed how she must have tried to fight back against her attacker. Thanks to the skin cells, semen, and other body fluids, they were able to create a DNA profile of the perpetrator. It was evaluated by the German Federal Criminal Police Office, but no match could be found. On Monday, May 23rd, a 20-year-old man strolled into the Dessau police station in Wolfgangstrasse. Sebastian Flech was a familiar face at the station, as his mother, Ramona, was a police officer and his stepfather was the police chief. When Sebastian said he wanted to make a statement about the body found near his house, it was quite a shock to everyone in the station. Sebastian said that the foreign DNA on Yangjie's body could have come from him, because he claimed on the night before her disappearance, his fiance Xenia Lang had met Yangjie and asked her if she was interested in a threesome. According to Sebastian, Yangjie agreed and the three had consensual sex. This excerpt comes from his original statement. Xenia had the idea for the threesome. She wanted to spice up our relationship. She brought the Chinese woman upstairs. She wanted it a little harder. We had sex for an hour. Everything voluntarily. I came 3 or 4 times in that time. He had nothing to do with Yangjie's death, and she was alive and well when she left their apartment. The police arrested Sebastian while they searched for his fiancée. Xenia was in town and on her way home with her 2 young children when the police caught up with them. Both Sebastian and Xenia continued to deny any involvement in Yangjie's murder. Investigators raided the couple's flat after apprehending the 2 potential suspects. The apartment's placement in a building 1 story above Yangjie's apartment was crucial. The apartment building Yangjie's father believed might have been the crime scene shared a border with the tree where Yangjie's body was discovered. Sebastian and Xenia's residence at 9 Johannesstrasse was examined by police, but little was found. Some inhabitants of the apartment complex decided to leave while construction was taking place there. Thus, only a small number of flats were occupied on the night of Yangjie's abduction. However, when a forensic team examined an unoccupied flat on the first floor, they discovered a torture room. There was blood all over the place, on the ground and even 3 meters up the wall. It was a scene of pure horror. At the time, just the fact that they discovered blood and other items was made public. Investigators from the forensic crime scene came to the conclusion that Yangjie was tortured for several hours and died a long, violent, and agonizing death. Sebastian Flech and fiance Xenia Lang were both taken into custody after it was confirmed that the DNA on Yangjie's body belonged to Sebastian Flech. According to the police's theory at the time, Yangjie Li was led to the couple's residence where she was raped. To cover up their crime, they killed her after the act. Volker Bittman, the top prosecutor, announced that they had 2 suspects in custody at a press conference on May 24th. He made it apparent that Sebastian turned himself in and refuted claims that Sebastian's mother and stepfather were being investigated. Because the suspects' parents were both senior police officers, questions were asked about what Sebastian had said to them. His mother, Ramona, had been in the force for 24 years, and his stepfather, George, was the police chief in Dessau. Ramona, Sebastian Fletcher's mother, participated in the preliminary investigation and spoke with people who resided in the same apartment building as her son. Clearly, this on paper itself is a huge conflict of interest. It was not until 10 days after the discovery of Yangjie's body that Sebastian came forward. The phone records showed that during this time, he contacted his mother at least 40 times, up to 10 times in one day. Had she helped her son cover up a horrible murder? Due to a conflict of interest, the Halle police took up the case. A week after Yangjie's body was found, Ramona and George reportedly helped Sebastian and Xenia move out of their apartment. They denied going into the apartment, but a fellow police officer saw both of them there carrying bags on that Saturday. Ramona insisted that she was never inside the apartment because she had injured her knee and could not walk up the stairs. George admitted that he was outside the apartment on that Saturday, but never went inside. The Attorney General in Nuremberg concluded that neither Ramona nor George had any influence on the investigation into their son, nor did they help him cover up the crime. The revelation: a shop owner who had been away on vacation handed police their strongest piece of evidence. The antique store on the ground level of Sebastian's and Xenia's apartment block had CCTV footage showing Yangjie's encounter with her killers. The black and white video taken on the evening of Yangjie's disappearance shows Xenia hovering at the entrance to the apartment building. Then, Yangjie jogs into the frame and Xenia straightens up. She calls Yangjie over and appears to be distressed. The logical conclusion from her hand signs and body language was that she asked Yangjie to help with something in her apartment upstairs. Yangjie appears to be a bit apprehensive. She looks over her shoulder, like she's hoping someone else is there. But no one was around, and Yangjie unwittingly followed Xenia inside, not knowing that she was the lamb being brought to the slaughter. Up to this point, police had believed that Sebastian was the main perpetrator, but seeing the footage of Xenia proved that she was the one who had lured Yangjie inside. Forensic psychiatrist Bernd Langer noted that there were only 2 things in Sebastian's life that kept him going: sex and power. Weeks before Yangjie's murder, he searched porn websites using keywords rape, Asian women, brutality. Dr. Langer said one would expect some level of anxiety about the crime or some degree of empathy, but this was not displayed at all. The trial began on November 25, 2016 and ran till February 2017. Sebastian and Xenia continued to plead not guilty. Neither admitted to anything, nor did they reveal anything. Eventually, 2 months into the trial, a sobbing Xenia broke her silence and let the world in to her darkest secret, the details about the night of Yangjie Li's murder and the events leading up to it. Xenia Lang had a troubled past. As a 12-year-old, she was sexually abused by her stepfather. At 16, she fell pregnant to her high school boyfriend, but he left her soon after the baby was born. When Xenia met Sebastian, she was familiar with the dynamic between an abuser and his victim, and she entered into a life of subservience like a moth to a flame. Xenia told the court that Sebastian derived pleasure from hurting his sexual partners. He even drew up a contract to regulate their sex life. It was all about control. If Xenia refused sex, there was a catalogue of punishments he would choose from. He even made a home video of himself abusing her. He can be heard saying, "Do as I want." His obsession with sex was one he shared with Xenia. Outside of that, his closest relationship was with his mother. They constantly spoke to each other on the phone. His stepfather testified that Ramona was the only person who could keep Sebastian in line. The court waited in anticipation as Xenia began her recollection of the day of Yangjie's murder. According to Xenia, Sebastian had threatened to leave her if she didn't bring him a woman. When she called his bluff and refused, Sebastian exploded and said he was going to harm the children. That is when Xenia took to the street, desperate to find someone, anyone, and the kind-hearted Yangjie happened to appear at that very moment, jogging into the eye of the storm. Xenia asked Yangjie's help to carry a box upstairs. As soon as they went inside the building, Sebastian appeared from his hiding spot and overpowered Yangjie. She was heading up the stairs, and he tackled her from behind. He forced her into the empty apartment that became the torture chamber. Sebastian and Xenia tied Yangjie up. After a brief struggle, a petrified Yangjie was on the floor, and Sebastian told Xenia to use Google Translate to communicate with their victim. First, he wanted to know if she had any sexually transmitted diseases. Then, he asked if anyone would notice if she went missing. Yangjie answered by shaking her head for no and nodding slowly for yes. Sebastian was satisfied with the information and said he wanted to smoke one more cigarette before they began. In the meanwhile, he ordered Xenia to have sex with Yangjie. Xenia complied and forced herself onto Yangjie, who was struggling and fighting to get away. When Xenia was done, she was made to watch her fiance rape Yangjie. Xenia then returned to their apartment to put the children to bed. According to Xenia, Yangjie was still alive when she left. She had the opportunity to call for help at this point, but she chose not to. She could have shown remorse and did the right thing, but she chose not to. Once the children were asleep, she returned to a diabolical scene created by her fiance. He told her that he had killed Yangjie. Xenia was mortified and wanted to know why he killed her. And ice-cold Sebastian answered, "Because I could." Forensic evidence showed that Sebastian brutally raped Yangjie multiple times and then bashed her head on the wooden floor. Then, with his victim still alive, he proceeded to strangle her and plunged her head into a bucket of water, hoping to drown her. Truly, the stuff of nightmares turned reality. Because Yangjie had so many defensive wounds, it was evident that she fought with every last bit of strength she had to stay alive. She did everything she could, but in the end, Sebastian, being 6 feet tall and well-built, overpowered her. After midnight, Sebastian and Xenia carried Yangjie's body to an abandoned part of the apartment building. They dragged her body out of the window on the first floor onto a scaffolding. From there, they threw her down. Yangjie's lifeless body fell under the pine tree, where she would eventually be found. On the CCTV footage supplied by the antique store owner, Sebastian can be seen exiting the building in the early hours of May 12th and walking in the direction of the tree. Moments later, he went back inside. From the footage, it is obvious that he went to check on his victim's body and probably moved her slightly to make sure she was better hidden. He did not appear stressed or panicked in the least, the usual traits seen in psychopathic killers. During the trial, Sebastian only spoke once, and that was when a police officer took to the witness stand. Sebastian exploded, saying, "Shut up!" For the rest of the trial, he didn't say a word. He maintained his innocence in killing Yangjie, but the evidence contradicted him. Yangjie's blood was on his shoes, and Xenia was the last person seen with Yangjie, luring her into their apartment. The trial continued throughout 2017. In May, a year after the murder, the Anhalt University held a memorial ceremony on the Dessau campus. In Yangjie's memory, they planted a white rose bush on campus. An altar with a photo of Yangjie was adorned with an offer of fruit and money. Fruit, so she won't go hungry in the afterlife. Money, so she would be taken care of. They also burnt a letter from her parents, hoping that the words would reach Yangjie in the afterlife. In the letter, her parents appealed with sadness to law enforcement to let justice prevail. In August, the trial was finally reaching its end. In Germany, a person can be tried under juvenile criminal law till the age of 21. This was granted to Xenia, who was sentenced to 5.5 years in prison for sexual assault. Murder charges against Xenia were dropped. However, due to the nature of the crime Sebastian committed, he was tried as an adult and sentenced to life in prison for murder and rape. He remained emotionless and had no reaction when his verdict was read. Psychologists testified that this was a case of folie à deux, the madness of two. This form of psychosis is a telepathic condition where two people share the same delusional beliefs. Individuals with this condition are socially isolated and do not have a lot of interaction with anyone other than themselves. Sebastian's and Xenia's extreme forbidden fantasies were brought into reality together, and together they acted it out. Judge Uda Schmidt called Yangjie's murder an incomprehensible crime. Sebastian had the audacity to appeal his verdict, but it was rejected by the Federal Court of Justice in 2018. Although a life sentence in Germany could be as little as 15 years, the judge in this case ruled no possibility of parole due to the aggravating circumstances of the murder. Court-appointed psychiatrist Dr. Langer agrees with this verdict. He is not optimistic about the possibility of reform in Sebastian's case. In an interview with Süddeutsche Zeitung, the psychiatrist recalled a conversation with the convicted killer. He claimed he asked Sebastian if he would be open to change, to which the young man replied, "I am who I am. I don't want to change. You can get along with me as I am, or don't bother trying." Yangjie Li's parents left Germany with their daughter's ashes in an urn, all their hopes and dreams, and her future cruelly taken from them, just to satisfy the bestial urges of a deluded man and his psychopathic sidekick. The only question that remains is, considering Sebastian and Xenia lived so close to Yangjie, was Yangjie's murder premeditated and planned, or was it really a simple case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time? Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel and come back for more gruesome crimes that shook the world.